Oh boy, this one is a lot to take in. I've been making a lot of Studio Ghibli videos lately, and that was mostly to prepare myself and the rest of my viewers for the inevitable that is my review for The Boy and the Heron, aka How Do You Live. It just released in US theaters, meaning I've finally gotten the chance to see it, and let's just say there's a lot to speak on. I've seen the movie twice now, I've seen it in sub and dub, and even after experiencing this film more than once, I still haven't entirely been able to process my full thoughts on it. This film has a lot going on, and it has a lot to say. Every Miyazaki film has something to say. Sometimes they have many things to say, and yet How Do You Live seems to have twice as much of that as any other film that he has made so far, both about us as human beings, and also about himself. The best way I can describe The Boy and the Heron is that at first it begins as a character study of what could be a young Miyazaki that later turns into a fairy tale with a world based on all of the memories, flaws, regret, imaginative ideas, and philosophy that Miyazaki holds. It kind of feels like the first half was based more around the structure of The Wind Rises, whereas the second half takes more of a Spirited Away type of approach. It's very interesting to me. While many movies by him have a lot to communicate, this one is fully communicating Miyazaki, with some moments feeling like a plea of desperation. We all know the guy isn't getting any younger. Everyone at Ghibli is aging, and we will not have Hayao Miyazaki for very much longer. And this is something he knows, and one of the many things he communicates within this film. We do not have as much time as we believe we do, but we also have more time than we believe we do as well. Life can feel so short, yet so long at the same time. As a younger person myself, I don't fully grasp this. A lot of us don't fully grasp this. But this film feels like a glimpse into what that feeling is like, with the granduncle feeling a lot like an insert for Miyazaki. It's not just for the older man facing the music, but also for the younger viewers facing the music, that these special people in their lives won't be around forever, and that we may not have all the time in the world to express our fullest gratitude for them. And that's scary. It's a scary feeling. This is shown through Mahito's nightmares of losing his mother, and his journey to learn how to accept his new mother and appreciate the family and friends that he has now, because he could always lose those people just like he lost his mother. And this is not the only thing we see Mahito go through. Once again, this film has a lot to say about many things. Mahito as a character is one of Ghibli's most fascinating creations to me. Whether or not that's a good thing entirely depends on you, but in my opinion, it's good. He's the most reserved and quiet Ghibli protagonist, at least in comparison to Miyazaki's very expressive and jumpy main characters. It's probably the main thing that sets him apart from every other character he's made. This is a very calm and slow movie, and while many Miyazaki films rely a lot on atmosphere and world exploration, The Boy and the Heron makes it the entire purpose, acting almost as a literal and metaphorical spiritual journey. It doesn't even really offer you much explanation. Things happen and you're not really supposed to question them. Mahito doesn't question them, so we're not supposed to either. Besides like one or two exposition scenes, there isn't a lot of that. You're introduced to the way things are and just have to sit with it. Sometimes Mahito will question things, but in most cases he just goes with what he's seeing, focusing on going forward instead of trying to get answers. And that's just what this movie commits to. Mahito's a bit of a delinquent and a big improviser, as we see from scenes in the beginning before it takes a more fantasy-like turn. And from context clues, you can see that he kinda suffers from depression and PTSD. And I'm not saying depression isn't a topic explored in Ghibli, but Mahito's depression is a lot more emphasized than with most Ghibli heroes. At times you wonder if Mahito even truly wants to be alive at the beginning of the film. His journey isn't just to learn to appreciate what he has around him, but also him learning to live his own life, to get over regret, and to want to be alive despite what he's been through and what he's seen. The thing with him though, is that a lot of his growth, along with many other things in this film, you kinda need to interpret on your own, as once again, this film does not offer you much explanation. A lot of his growth just isn't spoken in words, it's through actions. This is both a character study and a mythical adventure, but in a much more flawed and broken world than the ones we see in other Ghibli films. For once, the fantasy world elements in this film feel just as, if not more bleak than our own world. And for once, the solution to a lot of problems reside in our own world. For what could have been Miyazaki's last film, despite much of the more dark and bleak imagery, we see humanity and our world through a more optimistic lens. ends. That optimism is still left with an intentional hole at the end, since no problems in our world are given an actual answer. But what we are given to understand is that the world can't be improved through shouldering the burden as one person. Only through love and cooperation can we really do something. The burden of being a god is not something that a human can bear, and no matter how hard we try, because of our nature, we cannot make a perfect world, but we can make it better. But it's not something that we can do if we try to do everything ourselves. The story of this film is very rough around the edges, and the pacing is a lot different and could be labeled as messy. You could say this is a result of Miyazaki's age beginning to show in his work, but in a film like this, I believe that show of age works in its favor more than it doesn't, even if not entirely intentional. In a movie that optimizes our imperfections, I think the imperfections of the film itself make me appreciate it just a bit more, as I still think that even with some of its inconsistencies in pacing, it is a beautiful film nonetheless. I had no idea what to expect when I came in, and as it went on, I was worried that the film might throw away coherency for inventiveness, but I believe I was wrong. It still manages to get everything it wants to get across as well as it can, even if it could have been just a bit longer. This film relies on its themes to tell its story more than a lot of animated films, hence why I said it doesn't hold your hand. And I don't believe many people will sit with this one well because of just how jarring it can be. With age comes an unlearning of a lot of the fundamentals we dedicated ourselves to when we were younger, which is why, as well as desire to break out of a shell and a desire to tell more inventive stories with the little time that's left, a lot of filmmakers' works tend to become a lot different with age. It happened with Kurosawa, and is currently happening with other filmmakers like Scorsese and Miyazaki. I am all for this though. I believe stories that reflect on the younger years of a filmmaker's life with an honest look at their flaws, while also exploring their mortality and a slight desperation to keep living so that they don't have to leave the beauty behind, make for some of the most beautiful and emotionally resonant stories a filmmaker can tell. I may not fully grasp the feeling yet, but I can definitely feel it nonetheless. And that's what art is to me, a feeling. This film to me is a lot like what Madadayo to Kurosawa felt to me. It's imperfect, but has more honesty and raw emotion put into it than many artists have the guts to put in their own works, which is why I appreciate them so much more. Although I will say I don't fully love everything. As I said, it's rough around the edges. The pacing kinda just fluctuates from going very slow and taking its time to busting its ass to get to the finish line. While I think it's fine for 95% of the film, I can't help but feel it ended a little too abruptly. I thought there was gonna be something at the end that I missed because of just how weird the ending felt to me. Maybe I'm missing something, but it just felt a little too jarring. I believe this film could have used at least another 10 minutes in its runtime. I wouldn't have complained otherwise. I've seen this in both sub and dub, and I think both are great in many ways. However, on my second viewing, I think I prefer the dub just a little more thanks to performances from Robert Pattinson and Mark Hamill. Pattinson in his worst voice role ever adds so much personality and comedic whimsy to the Grey Heron that it was shocking. It unironically might be the best dub voice performance I've heard all year and one of the best in Ghibli. Hamill's performance also emphasizes the sense of tragedy feel in the character of the granduncle. A part of me also wonders if the characterization for the granduncle was at all based on Miyazaki's own fear of what he's leaving behind. After all, everyone at Ghibli is aging just like him, and with him being the face of the whole company, there could be some worry there about what could become of the company after he's gone, especially since there's no one else to really take his place. No one could ever replace Miyazaki, of course, but it's interesting taking into account the studio doesn't really have many creators left, besides he and Goro, so I'm curious if the granduncle is based on that concern. I know this character represents a lot of different themes, but I can't really go into them entirely yet. But I will say that Mahito's voice in English gave me a completely different feeling for him than in the sub. He feels more reserved in the Japanese version, while in English he sounds just a bit more emotionally driven and outgoing. He still has that reservation, but I don't think the dub really commits to it like the original voice performance in Japanese does. Overall though, I think the dub and sub are both fantastic. but I prefer the dub just a little more. It might also be because I think this film is just a lot better with multiple watches. Honestly, I also think this film may have my favorite soundtrack from a Ghibli movie. The music tells a lot of the story as always, and with the more toned down dialogue, it's put on an even taller pedestal. Ask me why, and all three variations got tears to suddenly drip from my eyes whenever it came on, even at the beginning. There's just something in that piece that sparks a sudden mix of nostalgic sadness, but also an optimistic turnaround. The song is a mirror, much like this movie, a reflection on life. Our hands are made of malice. That flaw is what makes us human. Even if we do not wish for it, that is the reason why we are human, and not anything else. We're not gods, and we cannot individually own the world, but together, through love and sympathy, we can influence it. I won't say too many spoilers, but this is what I got out of a speech from Mahito near the end of the film, which was the moment I realized that I do love this. Again, I know this will likely have a split audience, and I accept that. However, much like The Wind Rises, I will be on the side that adores this film. I'll probably see it again more times just because of how many layers there are to it. It's just such a fascinating work of art that sparks so much thought and emotion in many ways, from sadness to joy to nostalgia. Miyazaki takes a lot from his former films like Spirited Away, My Neighbor Totoro, Princess Mononoke, and in a way, it feels like a mixture of his expressive younger films and his more mature and personal films of recent years like The Wind Rises and Ponyo. In my review of The Wind Rises, I called it Miyazaki's most personal film, but here I believe that's changed. This is not only a deep reflection into Miyazaki's own life, but everything all the way to the world he creates for Mahito to explore has some piece of his own past and experiences put into it. From his regret as a parent, his regret as a son, his isolation from his busy life, and his hope for a better future, and his appreciation for his mother. One of my favorite scenes in the entire film is when Mahito goes to see Natsuko as she's in the delivery room. And while he's desperately trying to get to her, these papers go around wrapping themselves and sticking to Mahito and Natsuko, engulfing them just like the fire that engulfed his mother. And it's one of the most beautiful and heart-grabbing scenes that I've seen from a Miyazaki film, and from any film at all. With so many layers to look at, I believe it's a lot harder to review this film than any other Ghibli movie. I don't believe it's his best film, but it's damn amazing regardless. This is one of the most real fantasy stories I've seen, and one of the most touching and thought-provoking animated experiences I've received in recent memory, which is why I can appreciate it so much despite some of its imperfections. I decided to look at this film on a more emotional and thematic level than on a structural and conventional level, and that's because I don't believe it's really fair to look at this film in the typical way I do with many others. This is a different case, and I still haven't fully processed what this film actually is. In a way, I don't think I can really do this film justice in a discussion unless I sit here for hours, but I hope I was able to get off my more raw and initial thoughts as best as I could. I do want to make another video on this film in the future, probably a much longer one where I go entirely in depth on it because there is so much that I want to talk about. But that's going to have to wait until I view this film just a few more times to really grasp everything. The Boy and the Heron to me is a wonderful film, but I know not everyone will believe the same, and that's okay. I'll be thinking about this one for a while, and I think it'll only age better and better with time because of how much it has within it. Some may think there's too much, and I understand, but I disagree. I love this film, and if Miyazaki did commit to this being his final work, it would have been a fitting conclusion to one of the greatest legacies in film. Thank you Miyazaki, and thank you Studio Ghibli for the many wonderful years. And here's to as many more as we can get. Thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and comment your favorite Studio Ghibli movie. I was gonna promote this at the start, but it felt wrong to do so I'll do it now. You could click off, but I will be very grateful if you stick around to listen to what I have to say. I am in college, and I recently directed a short film with some of my college buddies that's up on my second channel right now. It's a Christmas-themed comedy, and it is very rough around the edges and isn't the best thing ever, but it was a great experience. My dream is to be a writer and a filmmaker, and while my first effort here isn't the best I could have done, I'm proud of how it turned out, and I would love to get to direct some more short films and actual films in the future. Of course, the best way to make that happen is to support this channel and the second channel. Everyone Everyone put a lot of effort that I'm very grateful for, and I'm grateful for anyone that goes and supports their efforts as well. I'm being a bit sentimental, but I really am grateful for the opportunities I've gotten thanks to all of you who watch my videos. And I will leave it at that and let you enjoy your day. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you all next time.